Hi, my name is Dave Donnan, and I've been in the food industry for over 40 years. As an engineer, I've run food plants, managed companies, and consulted to the largest food and agriculture companies in the world. This presentation is about the global food and agriculture industry. Many of you either work in the industry or have an interest in food. And I'm sure as food industry advocates, we've had the occasions, whether it is at a friend's house or at a cocktail party, or even at your Aunt Martha's Thanksgiving dinner when you've been asked that fundamental food industry question. Can we feed the world? A simple question that is rather hard to answer. Actually, the calculation for feeding the world is fairly straightforward. We start with the number of people, in our case, 7.7 billion people in the world. We then multiply by what each person eats. And this must be equal to or less than our planet. Pretty simple equation. But inevitably, there are complications with this formula. Things that'll make the equation get out of balance. Forces that'll make it more difficult. I've decided to divide these forces into two different types. The first is slow-moving and predictable forces. The most essential is population growth and demographics. Our population is 7.7 billion people, but it's expected to expand to 10 billion people by 2050. That's a 30% increase. And not only more people, but more old people. While our birth rate is slowing, we are living longer. Soon the number of people over 65 will be greater than the entire population of children under 15. And we're also mostly living in cities. 10 years from now, in 2030, there'll be 39 cities with over 10 million inhabitants each. By 2050, there'll be 50 cities and approximately 3 billion new middle-class consumers emerging in Asia. That's 10 times the population of the United States. In fact, right now, more people live inside this circle than outside this circle. The good news is that we have made tremendous progress on reducing hunger around the world. Today, 821 million people are food insecure. That's just 12% of the world population, down from 20% of the world population just 20 years ago. But while hunger has been reduced, obesity has taken over. Over 1.9 billion people are either overweight or obese in the world. That's 26% of the global population. The World Health Organization treats food scarcity and obesity as two ends of a global malnutrition epidemic. We are eating high caloric foods with often very little nutritional value. So something has to be done about our diets around the world. We need to increase our intake of nutritious calories. We need to find better balance in our diets. But back to our little formula. We have 10 billion people with 3 billion new middle-class consumers in Asia. They will expect to eat more processed food, more proteins. The dramatic increase in meat consumption alone will require a 100% increase in grain crops for animal feed. If the world adopted the standard American diet, the diet we have in North America, what we eat every day, we would need 5 planets by 2050. Obviously, this is not possible. Something must change. We only have this one Earth with limited resources of land and water. But what if we stripped away all the water? This is what it would look like if we took the water away. Notice the blue ball over the plains? That represents all the available water on the planet, both fresh and salt water. The second, smaller sphere over Kentucky is all the fresh water in the ice caps, buried underground and even in our bodies. And the third, the smallest sphere near Atlanta. Here, let me help with this arrow. This is the available fresh water in rivers, lakes, and groundwater. Just 1% of the fresh water. This is what we can access. This is what we have. And 70% of it is used in agriculture. Water is our most valuable resource, and it is scarce. A colleague from the Business Council told me that it is expected over the next 30 years, more wars will be over water than over oil. In fact, our climate and agriculture are linked. The effects of climate change and greenhouse gases are being felt by farmers, from longer growing seasons for some to reduced rainfall and new insects and crop diseases in others. 25% of all greenhouse gases come from agriculture, a large portion from livestock and methane emissions. Activists are proposing a reduction in meat consumption, but not for nutritional reasons, but for the environment. The second set of forces are fast-moving, but unpredictable ones. We are living in the world of VUCA, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, with dramatic shifts in political power, nationalism, and governance, resulting in problems of financial volatility, migration, political instability, activism, and reduced influence of global bodies such as the United Nations, the OECD, and the World Health Organization. Probably the most visible to us is global trade. The world's agriculture systems are based on the premise of free trade with large agricultural companies like Cargill, ADM, and Bunge. They produce the best regions of the world and ship to those customers that need the product. But the recent trade tariffs with China have upended the global agricultural infrastructure, reducing American soy exports to China by 80%. Brazil is now trying to pick up the slack, but do not have all of the infrastructure. The result of this one trade dispute has lowered the overall global agricultural productivity. So much for feeding the world. One of the impacts of climate change is more volatile weather patterns. We are seeing unprecedented flooding in the Midwest and droughts in the Mediterranean. In fact, economic losses due to weather-related events are surpassing $500 billion. Another problem is our global food system is not diverse. 75% of all the food we eat comes from 12 plants and 5 animals. These include corn, soy, rice, wheat, potatoes, beef, pork, chicken, lamb. We lack biodiversity and as a result are more prone to catastrophic pandemics that can wipe out our food systems. One example is our commercial bananas that are of one single varietal, the Cavendish. And this brings us to what is top of mind right now, global pandemics. In fact, with climate change, some increased insect specks invading our crops. In addition, we also see major pandemics that wipe out both plant and animal sources. Coronavirus is one of several pandemics that have occurred in the last decade. It will not be the last. Animal viruses are just as prevalent. The African swine flu has devastated hog population in China this year. China has 50% of the total pigs in the world, and they're being wiped out. This represents 20% of the world's hogs. This will have a profound impact on global protein markets in the future. So we have challenges ahead. On one side, we have 3 billion new consumers needing many more proteins and higher nutrition that require us to double our crop yields. But we are also running out of water. Our climate is causing problems. We have limited land. Our global trade system is fragmented, and we're seeing more disease. Back to our formula. So one question, can we feed the world? Luckily, we're all innovators. We thrive with change. People like you are here to change the world. In the past 5 years, we've seen the advent of new agricultural revolution. Investors are now seeing the benefit of technology and agriculture. Big data, precision agriculture, drones, sensors are transforming the entire process of farming. A soy farmer recently told me that he sits in his combine all day watching the screen to know precisely how much fertilizer, water, and nutrients to add to each plant. He says he farms data. He has increased his yields by over 25% in 5 years, and expects to add another 20 to 30% as well. In fact, this year we have a surplus of soy and corn due to improved yields. Genetics can also have a dramatic impact on food production. Drought-resistant seeds, nutrition-fortified vegetables, improved pest resistance are just all attributes of genetic research. CRISPR, clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats, is the word processor of genetics, allowing for precise development of attributes. One such project is to edit genes in cattle to reduce the emittance of methane gases, thus reducing its impact on climate. We also need to tackle food waste. Food waste is a very big issue globally. 30% of our total food production is wasted, either at time of harvest, in the supply chain, or post-consumption. If we could find ways to reduce this waste, then more of our food system would go to feeding the 10 billion people. From restaurants reducing food waste to grocery stores selling ugly vegetables. There are many examples of how we are tackling food waste. New approaches to agriculture are underway. Vertical farming, urban farming, and greenhouse technologies are all under development. Indoor farming is shown to reduce water usage by 70%. Entrepreneurs and startups are using sensor technology, LED lighting systems, and precision nutrients to develop the next generation of urban growing systems. I have met with several entrepreneurs in indoor grow systems, and it is remarkable their innovations and determination. We can now grow where we could not grow before. We can also get proteins from legumes, pulses, and nuts, and there are also over 2,000 edible species of insects. Grasshoppers and crickets are among the ones most commonly eaten and use 50% less water than chickens. Algae makes up 40% protein and is also a new source. These are the new sources of proteins, as well as plant-based meats that we are all familiar with. Finally, probably the largest impact may come from the most neglected part of our food systems, the smallhold farmer. 2.5 billion people live on 500 million small farm households, mostly in developing countries. If we were able to provide the right seeds, nutrients, and economics to these farmers, they would move from sustenance farming to feeding their neighbors, truly feeding the world. This is why large multinationals like Nestle, Unilever, Walmart, Coca-Cola are working with NGOs to promote the economics and viability of these farmers. Private funding has now surpassed government assistance. So the final question, can we feed the world? Many problems, potential solution, lots of work ahead. But we are the leaders in food industry. It is our job to overcome the obstacles, find the solutions, and ensure that we can feed the world. Thank you very much, and you can reach me with my email, dave@davidcdonnan.com. Thank you, and goodbye.